the fringes of the Republican Party, we are seeing Russian sympathy. I'm not going to call it even anymore just like, oh, isolationism. Because when I see Marjorie Taylor Greene repeating Russian state propaganda, and when I'm talking about Russian state propaganda, I mean Ukraine is harvesting the organs of babies, like the dumbest, bottom shelf Russian propaganda. We've had multiple Republicans vote against legislation to condemn the kidnapping of Ukrainian children. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene holding committee hearings on human trafficking and such, or not even holding committee hearings, being around committee hearings, talking a big game on it. And then when it comes time to condemn some human trafficking, she's nowhere to be found. In fact, she's not only nowhere to be found, she's explicitly going against condemning it. It's pathetic. It's awful, but it also makes you wonder, where are they getting this stuff? Where is this stuff coming from? I think that maybe it's Russian propaganda getting on social media, and then Ron Johnson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, these types will go on social media, absorb it through osmosis, and then repeat it as if it's true, thinking it's true. Because it's hard for me to imagine like Ron Johnson or Marjorie Taylor Greene are actually just like handled by the Russians directly. If that happened, it'd be a massive scandal. It'd be the complete end of their political careers. I think that the former is a much more realistic scenario. But it's impossible to say, because when you are voting against the kidnapping of Ukrainian children, you start to really question the motives of those involved. Why would anyone vote against condemning the kidnapping of children? And so I wanted to check out this interview with Republican Representative Mike Turner, very conservative man, certainly far from progressive. You can call him a Republican true blood if you want. Anyway, he went on CNN to talk about a bunch of stuff. He talked about Israel, talked about other topics, but specifically they went into Republican opposition to Ukraine aid. And he came around to saying basically that Russian propaganda has infected the Republican Party. And he is saying that there are those in the House that are just anti-Ukraine and just straight up pro-Russia, as in they're supporting pro-Russian messages out on the House floor. I wanted to check this out because this is a Republican calling out his own party on the matter. This is not somebody who would have a motivation to say that his own party is falling for the most like bottom shelf propaganda, just to be performatively contrarian or anti-Ukraine or whatever the motivation is for the different individuals. I assume it's different person to person. Whether it's isolationism spilling over into hatred towards Ukrainians or sympathy for the Russians due to their crusade against the woke, I don't know. Anyway, let's check out this interaction. Maybe Mike Johnson give us a better idea.
Joining us now is the chairman of the House Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio. Congressman, thanks for joining us, Mr. Chairman. I want to start on the news this morning. The Israeli military says it has withdrawn some ground forces from Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, though a significant force remains in other parts of Gaza. How significant is this move?
Well, I think you're certainly seeing some efforts to respond to the White House's vocal criticism.
Look, I still think that, I don't like making predictions, but if people are reading this as, oh my God, they're done, the Israelis are pulling out, Biden has succeeded in convincing Netanyahu, Netanyahu could very easily be preparing to intensify operations, and he's gathering troops together to make another push. And try to push into the last pocket of Hamas control down in the south. I mean, the areas that the Israeli military has yet to take ground control of at any point. So anybody that is at this point saying, yay, it's over, woo. No, it isn't over. The war's not over. It'll probably not be over still for months to come. Whether that'll just be 2 months or 3 months, I don't know. But I don't think it's ending anytime soon. I'm not going to make any hard predictions because I don't want to look like the town fool, as many other people have made predictions online about wars. It's a very dynamic situation. I just don't think that the odds are high that he's just completely backing off now. And it's a really good chance he's just regathering forces to push.
of the operations of Israel in Gaza. You know, as you indicated, Jake, this is the 6th-month demarcation of the horrific attack that occurred October 7th, and then the subsequent declaration by Israel that they would enter Gaza for the purposes of eliminating Hamas. Today, the Palestinians in Gaza remain hostages to Hamas, and Hamas has not been eliminated. We've seen, I think, an overconfidence of Israel both on its intelligence, both when it failed to see October 7th and when it went into Gaza to eliminate Hamas. That has been, I think, part of the outcome that we've seen of the both haphazardous and dangerous military operations that resulted in unacceptable civilian deaths and certainly the food crisis that you described.
This comes as more negotiations for a ceasefire and release of the hostages are beginning. Does this move by Israel to withdraw some troops from Gaza, does it make you more optimistic? The news that Israel is sending a delegation to Cairo, and what's your position on—
Also, it could be just redeployments to other areas. Like somebody just said in Gutter Chat, it could be like, oh, we got to move some troops to the north because we don't know what Hezbollah is going to do. Like it could be, this could be a situation where we're overly reading in to these troop movements and trying to apply political implications that do not exist.
On the urgency of a ceasefire with the return of hostages?
Well, the CIA Director Burns has done an excellent job in shuttle diplomacy and—
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Trying to bring all of the parties together to get the hostages released and to get a ceasefire. You know, quite frankly, it seems that almost President Biden has been asleep at the wheel as he has not responded to the crisis as it's unfolded, and now making public statements criticizing Netanyahu, criticizing Israel. When this has been going on for some time, Director Burns has tried.
Wait, his critique is that Biden is critiquing Israel after they committed a war crime? Is that his critique? When our allies commit war crimes, we brush it under the rug like the good old days. But yeah, he's critical of Israel because Israel has done things that are easy to criticize. Hey, I think blowing up aid workers is bad. As somebody who's been with aid workers as they've been blown up, it's a very unpleasant experience.
Desperately to get a ceasefire and to get the hostages released. I think he's done an excellent job. Certainly the last ceasefire and hostages that were released were a result of his efforts. I think, I put a great deal of faith in the work that he's doing, and I'm certainly hopeful that that will result in both hostages released and a ceasefire so additional humanitarian aid can get to the Palestinians.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is actively preparing for Iran to strike after Israel killed high-ranking Iranian military officials who were at a diplomatic facility in Damascus, Syria.
Which is against international law, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Very clearly against international law. Should have been applied by diplomatic immunity.
Can you be any more specific about the nature of the threat from Iran? Are Americans in danger?
Well, I think Americans in the area remain in danger. Remember, Iranian proxies have—
I think the Israeli perspective on this would be pretty simple, though. It'd be like, was Iran following international law when they supplied Hamas? And then look what Hamas did. Like, that would probably be their perspective. Doesn't make it any more legal. Doesn't make it any like, okay, like international law is providing you a waiver. These facilities represent a nation's sovereign territory. They're supposed to be free from being struck in this manner. They're supposed to have diplomatic immunity in these facilities. And that is a global standard that I am very much interested in upholding and continuing to uphold, which is why I'm also not happy with the raid in Honduras in order to capture the former vice president out of the Mexican embassy after he claimed asylum. And I am happy to see like the wave of condemnation from Latin American countries, and we're seeing it expand to more countries as well. Like, yeah, I think that diplomatic standard should stay.
Continued to attack U.S. troops in the area, again, with the Biden administration being slow to respond and ultimately responding to those attacks. And of course, the United States has moved additional capabilities and assets in the area to deter Iran from entering into this.
Dylan, it wasn't the main building. Does that change things? I mean, it changes it from the fact that there was one building here and one building there, and this is the building blown up. Like, it could have been this building. But under international law, it changes nothing. Like, if you could have blown up a garden shed on that territory and it would still been illegal.
this conflict directly with Israel, although their proxies, Hamas, which the conflict is directly with, and Hezbollah continues to be a threat to Israel in Lebanon. But I think what we're seeing here is
I do think, like, if they blew everything up, maybe the response would have to be stronger because the Iranians would be even more concerned about deterrence. Like, I think it would change the response. But when it comes to international law, it just being a building on the consulate and not the main building doesn't change anything.
Certainly, the consulate in Syria was a legitimate target for Israel because Iran certainly is the source of which all this is coming. At the same time, it still is very
Legitimate to how? Legitimate under his purview? Legitimate under Israeli purview? Because certainly isn't legitimate under international law. Like, legitimate to him? I don't know what he means by legitimate.
unwise as we were trying to put pressure on Iran to keep them out of this conflict, both with U.S. presence.
There isn't like a diplomatic rule that, like, well, if this consulate is being used to support your enemies, you can blow it up. That is not a rule that I was familiar with, has been passed anywhere, introduced.
And with our response to the attacks on our own troops, this certainly does escalate the issue throughout the entire region.
Let's turn to Ukraine, an issue that's important to you and your fellow Republican chairman, Michael McCaul, who runs the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman McCaul made a comment this week about what he says sounds like Russian propaganda from some conservative media and why it's so difficult to explain to Republican voters why supporting Ukraine is important. He told Julia Yaffe, quote, "I think Russian propaganda has made its way into the United States, unfortunately, and it's infected a good chunk of my party's base." He singled out.
I mean, we're just talking about the party's base. Like, if you create a political hole that somebody could fill through this proliferation of propaganda, someone will try to take the opportunity to fill it, even if it means degrading themselves to being a mouthpiece for the Russian state. Even if it means degrading themselves in that way. We've seen that from Argentina Green. We've seen that from others. And whether or not this is real or true, why would that matter in an environment where, a political environment where a candidate for president can just say, you know what, I won. Sir, but the vote's clear. No, I won. And then they can run again, and it's not embarrassing. It's not treated as pathetic. If you don't put a value in the truth in our public conversations, then it can lead to people taking advantage of that fact to try to exploit and divide our society.
Primetime shows on conservative channels. Do you agree with him? And how big is this problem?
Oh, it is absolutely true. We see directly coming from Russia attempts to mask communications that are anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia messages, some of which we even hear being uttered on the House floor. I mean, there are members of Congress today who still incorrectly say that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine is over NATO, which of course it is not. Vladimir Putin having made...
Tucker had a lot of opportunity. I mean, Tucker tried really hard to get Putin to focus on NATO in that interview, and he really... And he wanted to talk about Prince Rorick's horse. He was so motivated.
It's very clear, both publicly and to his own population, that his view is that this is a conflict of a much broader claim of Russia to Eastern Europe. And
I'm not of the belief that NATO played no role, but I think it was a supporting role, if that.
Including claiming all...
As in, like, part of his motivation, but a smaller part of a much broader ideological framework, which he believes Ukraine belongs to Russia. And this is stuff he said before the war, this is stuff he says during the war, and if he survives it, it might even be stuff he says after the war.
Ukraine territory as Russia's. Now, to the extent that this propaganda takes hold, it makes it more difficult for us to really see this as an authoritarian versus democracy battle, which is what it is. President Xi of China, Vladimir Putin himself have identified it as such. We need to stand up for democracy. We need to make certain that we know that authoritarian regimes never stop when they start an aggression. Ukraine needs our help and assistance now, and this is a very critical time for the U.S. Congress to step up and provide that aid.
Speaker Johnson's leadership is in trouble if he puts a bill funding Ukraine, providing aid to Ukraine on the floor, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, your colleague.
This is the thing. This is why I don't know if I could do CNN or work with CNN or ever do the type of stuff that Jake Tapper does. It's because, like, there's so many questions I want to ask this guy. Like, Is there anyone specific that you would name that is spreading Russian propaganda? Or, hey, we got a clip of somebody saying this on the House floor. Hey, we got a clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is what I would pull up. Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that the Ukrainians are harvesting the organs of babies in order to fund the war effort. I mean, having him respond to this or call this stuff out directly, that'd be good. I mean, if the point of this interview is not only to show that, like, you know, not the entire Republican Party has been dominated by like semi like Russian sympathetic to the invasion, like maniacs, and that this is a minority that's exploiting misinformation that has taken hold or propaganda that has taken hold within the Republican base. I mean, having him refute it directly would probably be useful to that goal. It probably would also be useful to the goal of isolating Marjorie Taylor Greene's red line on Ukraine.
From Georgia, who's already threatened a motion to vacate. How worried should Speaker Johnson be?
I don't think he's at any risk. I think that what people have been referring to as the chaos caucus, those individuals who are seeking attention for themselves and trying to stop all of the important.
Damn. He just said Marjorie Taylor Greene's part of the chaos caucus. He low-key just called her an attention whore. He just called her an attention whore, just more nice.
Work in Congress are now seen as merely disruptive. Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader on the Democratic side, has made it clear that the Democrats will not join with efforts to unseat Johnson as we, this year, approaching the election, undertake the most important work of Congress, which, of course, is making certain.
I will say, by the way, Democrats did not stick out their neck for McCarthy, but now it's been 6 months later. Ukraine is in a very crucial turning point of the war. This year is going to shape the rest of the war. It is a crucial year. Russian success and failure will either define the 2025 and moving forward in the war, and whether the Ukrainians can pick back momentum but stunt Russian momentum, or will define whatever negotiations that could follow. It is a crucial year in the war, and time is of the essence. And for Marjorie Taylor Greene, there seems to be no impetus to speed it up, because she doesn't care if they win or not.
Certainly fund the government, make certain that these national security packages pass, and of course, that our Foreign Surveillance Reauthorization Act passes.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because Speaker Johnson announced this weekend that the House is going to vote on that for surveillance bill to reform and extend authority for spy agencies for them to be able to conduct surveillance.
By the way, I think there's a really good chance that Mike Johnson, as an attempt to avoid a recall vote, even if he knew Democrats could save him, which he might think comes with political risk, maybe Trump will turn on him if Democrats come and save him, and he starts calling like Mike Johnson some mean nickname, some mean Trumpian nickname, like just loser Mike or whatever. There's a reason that he might go forward with the Trump loan plan for Ukraine. But I will say that, no, I don't think there's many people in the foreign policy, I don't know, we could say bubble, elite, management, community, whatever you want to call it, who thinks that Trump really has a grip on what needs to follow with this. And certainly not many people who think that he's really that dedicated to supporting Ukraine. Well, when we're getting reports like, where is it? Where is this report from the... here it is. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has privately said he could end Russia's war by pressuring Ukraine to cede Crimea and the Donbass to Moscow. The Washington Post reported on April 7th, citing sources. Trump has repeatedly said he could end Russia's war within 24 hours if elected president. By the way, the idea was that if Ukraine didn't accept this deal, that he would cut off aid, and then that would be that. That seemed to be what he was saying. But on the other end of that, he was saying if the Russians don't accept the deal, then they'll double the aid. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. I think it's very unlikely. But he is talking about ceding the Donbass. Does that include Kramatorsk and Sloviansk? These are cities the Russians don't even control. Cities, I mean, like, you put all that together, you're talking about like over 100,000 people that would have to flee their homes, that would have to run away. I mean, some would stay, I would presume, either due to the fact they don't have money anywhere else. They don't want to leave the home or the place that their children or families buried. They believe that one day Ukraine will come back, or they're just straight up bladers. Like that's gonna uproot all those people. And what about the millions of people who are already displaced, who have no dream of coming back unless Ukraine retakes those territories due to Russian prosecution of those who have ties to the Ukrainian government, ties to anybody in the Ukrainian armed forces, and religious minorities like Protestants who have been harassed by the Russian government, had their churches taken over and turned into military bases. Bogdan was like that. He was part of a Protestant family that had to leave. What about those people? Bogdan, my fixer from the recent documentary, what about those people? These are not major considerations because Ukraine, in Trump's mind, has now just become a map to carve up in the communities and people. Like, that's not seen at that table that Trump's going to have. Just like he didn't have the Afghans at the table when he negotiated with the Taliban, I don't think he's going to have the Ukrainians at the table when he tries to negotiate this deal. He's just going to tell them, here's the proposal. Definitely if he really wants to be serious about doing this in 24 hours. I will say, though, it will be interesting if that's the deal Trump proposes and Putin's like, well, actually, we need Mariupol because we fought for it. And then Trump's like, what do you mean? It's fine. You get more stuff. You get more stuff. What do you mean? I could see that end up backfiring for Putin because he probably wants more. I mean, you don't send all those people to die in Avdiivka unless you really want to take more. But that's in Donetsk. But they are charging in the south. They are charging in the south. I think they want to keep Mariupol. So how this exactly would play out, I don't know. But it certainly is not steadfast support for Ukraine. Anyway, back to this.
Of foreign intelligence on domestic soil. It's known as FISA. There have been abuses in the past. I know this has been a contentious issue between you and House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. You have different views on this. Are you going to vote for this latest version of the FISA bill, and do you think it will have the votes to pass?
Absolutely. I was the Intelligence Committee was instrumental in drafting the bill that's going to the House floor.
I think they're completely off of Ukraine aid. And I don't want to talk about this bill right now. I don't want to talk about this. This guy is a powerful Republican. This is not some dingbat. This is not some rando. This is a powerful Republican who has a powerful committee position and is chairman. And this is not the first Republican to bring this up. He's just calling them all attention whores. He's calling the pro-Russia people, I mean, I should have to be blunt about it, attention whores. If we can get more honest statements like this out there and start getting them to go out there and challenge these narratives and pressure Marjorie Taylor Greene so she feels the heat. She feels the heat. The people who are blocking this feel the heat. That make it clear that we're trying to do serious work here, trying to determine the future safety of the country, and we're not going to make space for dilly-dallying because you have a theory about babies that you found off of being killed and harvested for organs that you found on the same place that she picked up her QAnon nonsense. And by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene was a QAnoner. I'm saying was in past tests under the assumption that she really did change her mind, and not that, well, put it lightly, that she still believes it and she's just covering for it. I don't know which is which. She says she's changed her mind and that her eyes have been opened, but that was only a few years ago.
Appreciate you raising this issue because this is surveillance of four.
Oh wait, this is I don't know why I clicked this again. Anyway, good luck to the people pushing Marjorie Taylor Greene. Good luck to the people trying to pressure Mike Johnson. Let's not do the loan bill. Let's pass aid to Ukraine. Let's get it done. Let's pass it. Let's send over the aid. They needed it yesterday.